At dawn, a fierce glow stained the endless expanse of the western plains, where the earth whispered secrets of ancient battles and unyielding survival. A solitary figure emerged from the dim light. A lean warrior with eyes like flint and a weathered face carved by years of relentless hardship. His name was Tasunka, and every scar told a story of lost defiance and a burning thirst for justice that pulsed through his veins like the steady drum of an ancestral heartbeat. Tasunka moved silently over the rugged terrain, each step measured against the weight of his past and the promise of vengeance. In the stillness of the early morning, the land itself seemed to echo his solitary journey, the rustling grasses and distant bird calls forming a subtle symphony of both hope and despair. Memories of his ravaged village and the screams of loved ones, now mere whispers in the wind, propelled him forward, each footfall a silent vow to reclaim the honor stolen from his people. In the pale light, his eyes caught the fleeting silhouette of a fading campfire, a ghost of the past when his community gathered to celebrate life, share wisdom, and bond under the vast, star-strewn sky. That campfire, once a beacon of unity, had been extinguished by the ruthless hand of invaders, leaving behind a void filled with grief and smoldering anger. Yet amid the embers of his sorrow, a fragile hope still flickered, an ember nurtured by the resolve to rebuild what had been torn asunder. As Tasunka traversed a narrow ridge overlooking a valley choked with dust and the remnants of forgotten battles, his gaze hardened at the sight of a distant encampment. This was no ordinary outpost. The crude structures and makeshift barricades testified to a brutal incursion by settlers and bandits, whose insatiable greed had driven them to subjugate the native lands. In that moment, the central conflict crystallized before him, a battle not only against men who trespassed on sacred soil, but also against the ceaseless fury of a wilderness that had borne witness to too many tragedies. Every muscle in his body coiled with determination as memories of his mentor's teaching surged within him, the wisdom passed down through generations, warning him that the land itself was a living, breathing entity that both nurtured and punished those who dared to challenge its ancient laws. The old words reverberated in his mind, urging him to honor the past even as he embraced the harsh lessons of the present. In the silence that followed, the wind carried faint echoes of ancestral chants, a reminder that his struggle was not solitary, but shared by the spirits of those who had walked these lands long before him. Tasunka's eyes narrowed as he recalled the image of his fallen kin, their faces etched with both serenity and sorrow, a stark contrast to the violence that had ripped them away. The burden of remembrance pressed heavily on his soul, yet also imbued him with a strength that was as inexorable as the river carving through the canyon walls. In the quiet intensity of that moment, the warrior understood that his path was marked by sacrifice and a relentless pursuit of redemption. His heart, scarred yet unyielding, beat with a purpose that transcended the immediate desire for revenge. It beat with the promise of restoring a legacy that time and tyranny had nearly erased. A sudden gust of wind stirred the dry earth, carrying with it the scent of rain and distant smoke, a portent of the chaos yet to come. Tasunka paused at the edge of a weathered bluff, allowing his gaze to sweep over the undulating horizon where nature and conflict intertwined. Here, beneath the expansive vault of a rising sky, he felt the pulse of the wild land merge with his own, as though every rock, every blade of grass, was an extension of his unbreakable will. In that profound communion with the land, he silently vowed that no force, however brutal, could silence the spirit of his people. In the distance, the encampment flickered like a mirage, an ominous signal that the enemy's presence was imminent, and that the struggle for the soul of the land was about to intensify. With each heartbeat, Tasunka steeled himself for the trials ahead, knowing that the path of vengeance was strewn with peril and sacrifice. Yet even as shadows lengthened and the first hints of an approaching storm darkened the horizon, there was a spark of resolve in his eyes that promised transformation. His journey was not simply one of retribution, but a profound quest to rediscover his identity amid the wreckage of war and sorrow. As the sun climbed higher, casting long, dramatic shadows across the terrain, Tasunka descended from the bluff with silent determination. Every step carried the weight of his ancestors and the burden of a fractured legacy yearning to be healed. The encampment loomed closer now, a dark stain upon the pristine wilderness, beckoning him confront the harbingers of a corrupt new order. And yet, even as the spirit burned with the fury of a tempest, there was an undeniable sense of purpose that promised a new beginning, a chance to reshape the narrative of his people one courageous act at a time. In the quiet moments before the inevitable clash, as the wind whispered ancient secrets in the sky, shivered with the promise of a coming storm, Tasunka's gaze lifted the horizon with unspoken resolve. The enemy was near, and with it came the certainty of conflict, yet his heart remained steadfast, fueled by a deep, enduring belief in the power of redemption. As the plains bore witness to the awakening of a warrior, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the very limits of human endurance and spirit. A battle whose echoes would resonate long after the dust had settled, inviting all who listened to the timeless call of honor, sacrifice, and the unyielding will to endure. The journey had only just begun, and with every step into the gathering darkness, Tasunka carried the legacy of his past like a torch against the encroaching night, daring the fates to dim its light. The relentless wilderness pressed in as Tasunka pressed forward, his solitary figure swallowed by a barren landscape, where every step was a battle against both nature's cruelty and the ghosts of his past. The scorching sun bore down upon cracked, parched earth, and the silence was broken only by the soft shuffle of his worn boots against stone and dust. In that vast, unforgiving expanse, every footfall resonated with the memories of lost kin and the fierce determination to reclaim honor from a world that had forsaken him. Along a narrow, twisting trail, the wind carried not only the dust of the desert, but also murmurs of ancient lore, a reminder that the land itself remembered the struggles of its people. Jagged rocks and resilient scrub challenged his progress, forcing him to navigate with both caution and resolve. The ceaseless sound of his heartbeat mingled with the rustle of dry vegetation, each beat echoing the inner turmoil that had long festered in the wake of tragedy. It was as if the earth, scarred and defiant, shared in his silent vow to rise above the relentless tide of sorrow. As the day advanced, a sudden shift in the wind heralded the approach of a storm. Dark clouds, heavy and oppressive, rolled in with quiet inevitability, blotting out the brilliance of the sky. The first hesitant droplets fell like whispered regrets onto the sun-baked ground, turning the dust to mud and transforming the path ahead into a treacherous maze. In that moment, the relentless elements became both adversary and mentor, a trial of endurance that would test his body and spirit alike. Seeking refuge beneath a cluster of ancient gnarled trees, Tasunka crouched low as the rain intensified, the droplets cold against his skin and mingling with the sweat of exertion. It was within this precarious shelter, amid the drumming of the storm, that he sensed another presence, a subtle disturbance in the cadence of the falling rain. Emerging slowly from the shadowed perimeter of the trees came a man whose every movement betrayed a lifetime spent wrestling with nature's whims. His weathered face was partially hidden beneath a hood, and his eyes, deep and knowing, met Tasunka's with an unspoken understanding. Without preamble, the stranger's voice broke through clamor of a storm. "I am Colt," he said softly, his tone both calm and resolute, as though he traversed storms far greater than the one that now enveloped them. In that single utterance, the oppressive solitude that had long been Tasunka's constant companion lightened just a fraction, replaced by a shared acknowledgement of the harsh realities they both endured. There was no need for pleasantries. The harshness of the land had long taught that survival was not a solitary pursuit, but a burden best borne together. Side by side, they stepped out from beneath the scant shelter, facing the onslaught of rain and wind. The landscape, once a predictable stretch of dry earth, had transformed into a churning mosaic of mud and uncertainty. Every step became a deliberate act of defiance against nature's fury, and the pair moved with an unspoken synergy, a silent agreement that each would watch the other's back in a domain where trust was as vital as water. In the midst of the storm's relentless assault, Colt's steady guidance proved invaluable. With a practiced eye, he identified a narrow, more secure passage along the rocky incline, a path that offered not just physical protection, but the promise of respite from the storm's relentless barrage. As they advanced along this precarious trail, their shared struggle against the elements forged an unexpected bond. Short, pointed exchanges of survival wisdom filled the gaps between the roaring wind and pounding rain. Each were a brick in the foundation of a nascent alliance. Tasunka found himself opening up to this unexpected companion, realizing that the hardships of the wild did more than test physical strength. They demanded a melding of hearts hardened by loss and refined by the crucible of survival. In Colt's measured gestures and deliberate silence, he saw reflections of his own inner battle, a fight not only to survive the merciless land, but also to overcome the inner turmoil born of grief and a thirst for vengeance. Each shared glance and brief nod became a testament to the resilience of those who dare to trust in the face of overwhelming adversity. The storm, as if acknowledging their unyielding resolve, began its slow retreat, leaving behind a softened drizzle and a landscape forever altered by its passage. In the transient calm that followed, the muddy trail cleared to reveal a tentative path forward. Tasunka paused, water dripping from his weathered hair, and allowed himself a moment of reflection. The encounter with Colt had not only provided immediate relief from the elements, but had also stirred within him a flicker of hope, an assurance that even amid nature's unremitting wrath, unity could kindle the strength to persevere. Yet, as they resumed their journey, the greater trial loomed on the horizon. The wilderness had stripped them down to their barest essentials, but it was clear that this was merely one of many challenges yet to come. The trials of survival were not confined solely to the caprices of nature, but extended to the lingering shadows of past oppressions, and the ever-present threat of those who sought to exploit the land's vulnerabilities. The world beyond the storm was fraught with both human treachery and the enduring scars of historical injustice, battles that would require not only the resilience of the body, but the fortitude of the spirit. In the soft, waning light of recovering day, as the clouds receded to reveal glimpses of a bruised, hopeful sky, Tasunka's eyes met Colt's with a quiet understanding. The storm had passed, but its echoes would remain, a reminder of the relentless struggle that defined their existence. With each step forward on the newly firm ground, the warrior felt a subtle transformation take root within him. The shared ordeal had kindled a determination to confront not just the immediate challenges of survival, but a larger, more profound conflict that loomed like a distant storm on the horizon. In that charged, reflective pause before the next leg of their journey, hope and uncertainty mingled in the cool air. The path ahead was shrouded in ambiguity, yet every shared stride affirmed their unspoken pact, that together they could defy the inexorable forces arrayed against them. As the wilderness stretched out before them, a tapestry of beauty and brutality interwoven in equal measure, both men braced themselves for the battles yet to come, a promise that the trials of survival would forge not only their destinies, but also the future of a land steeped in ancient legacy and enduring spirit. Beneath a brooding sky, Tasunka and Colt crept along a narrow valley where the wind whispered of impending doom. The air, heavy with the scent of rain and regret, carried the echoes of a people's suffering, a suffering that demanded retribution. Each step forward was deliberate, the earth beneath their feet a silent witness to centuries of lost honor and stolen legacy. Here, in this grim theater of fate, the past and present converged into one relentless, uncompromising moment. The valley opened into a clearing dominated by the enemy's camp, a sprawling outpost of crude barricades, tattered flags, and the bitter stench of greed. The camp, a malignant blot against a natural order, pulsed with the sinister energy of men who thrived on conquest. Tasunka's eyes burned with a quiet fury as he surveyed the scene. Every makeshift structure and hastily erected fortification testified to an invasive force that had desecrated the sacred lands of his ancestors. This was no ordinary enemy. It was the embodiment of a centuries-old vendetta against a people whose only crime was to exist in harmony with the wild. From behind shattered outcrop emerged a gaunt figure clad in worn leathers, his presence both commanding and chilling. His eyes, cold and calculating, reflected the arrogance of a man who believed himself invincible. This was the bandit captain, the architect of relentless raids and a living symbol of the oppressor's brutality. His voice, sharp and disdainful, cut through the murmuring wind as he jeered. "You dare trespass on our domain? Your kind is not meant for these lands." The words, heavy with scorn, reverberated through the clearing and stoked the embers of Tasunka's wrath. Without a word, Tasunka stepped forward, his every muscle coiled in anticipation. The memories of his lost village and the faces of his fallen kin surged within him, a torrent of grief and resolve that transformed his pain into an unyielding determination. Beside him, Colt's steady gaze never wavered. His silent, measured presence conveyed both a lifetime of hardship and profound understanding of the unforgiving nature of their struggle. The bond between them, forged in the crucible of nature's wrath, was now their strongest shield against the tyranny that threatened to erase their heritage. The clearing, once eerily silent, erupted into chaos as the enemy surged forward like a dark tide. Metal clashed with bone, and the roar of combat filled the air. A cacophony of desperate cries, grunt of exertion, and the rhythmic thud of determined feet against the earth. Tasunka's arrows whistled through the storm of violence, each shot a calculated strike in honor of a lost past. In the melee, his movements were both graceful and lethal, a dance of defiance that spoke of the deep-rooted traditions of his people. Meanwhile, Colt, with the precision of a seasoned warrior, parried and struck with measured force, his blade a streak of silver in the dim light. In the heart of the fray, the bandit captain advanced with malevolent intent, his eyes fixed on Tasunka as if he were the embodiment of all the world's transgressions. Their duel, set against the backdrop of a collapsing enemy line, was a visceral clash of ideals. Every parry and counterstrike was imbued with centuries of anguish and the hope of redemption, a silent conversation in the language of violence. Tasunka's strikes, fueled by the weight of ancestral sorrow, found their mark with relentless accuracy, while the captain's sneers and desperate lunges betrayed a deep-seated fear of the inevitable reckoning. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to suspend as the two adversaries faced each other amid the chaos. The clearing around them blurred into insignificance, every detail reduced to the raw, searing focus of their battle. Then, with a decisive cry that split the air, Tasunka channeled the fury of his lineage into one final, sweeping blow. The bandit captain staggered, his arrogant facade crumbling as he fell, a symbol of the oppressor's faltering grip on a land that refused to yield. As the enemy's ranks faltered, the tide of battle shifted imperceptibly but irrevocably. The once confident invaders, now gripped by uncertainty, began to waver, their cohesion unraveling under the weight of their own disillusionment. In the aftermath, amid the dissipating echoes of combat and the mingled scent of blood and rain, Tasunka stood resolute, a living testament to the enduring spirit of his people. Colt, ever the vigilant guardian, remained by his side, the unspoken promise of a shared struggle etched into every scar and every breath. Yet even as the clearing bore the scars of this fierce confrontation, the victory was tempered by a sober realization. The battle was but one chapter in a longer, graver conflict. The enemy, though shaken, had not been vanquished entirely. Their defeat here was a fleeting respite, a momentary reprieve before the inevitable resurgence of their relentless onslaught. The land, scarred by the clash of fates, whispered a grim reminder that the struggle for justice and survival was far from over. In that charged silence following the battle's climax, Tasunka's gaze swept across the ruined clearing. Each shattered piece of the enemy's camp, every echo of the fallen, was a stark reminder of the long road ahead. A road paved with sacrifice, perseverance, and the enduring will to reclaim a stolen legacy. As the dust began to settle, the two warriors exchanged a look of solemn understanding, a silent vow that, together, they would continue this arduous journey. The clash of fates had only deepened their resolve, affirming that their fight was not merely for vengeance, but for the very soul of a land that had endured too much sorrow. With the dying light casting long, haunting shadows over the battered field, Tasunka and Colt moved forward, each step carrying the weight of both triumph and lingering despair. Their path remained shrouded in uncertainty, yet the embers of hope burned steadily within their hearts, a promise that, no matter the darkness ahead, the spirit of resistance would never be extinguished. The battle had been won, but the war for justice and reclamation was only just beginning. As dusk surrendered to the night, the remnants of the battle lay strewn across a blood-stained plain, a silent testament to both triumph and loss. Tasunka and Colt, weary yet resolute, moved through the wreckage with measured steps, their eyes reflecting the haunting glow of a dying sun and the memories of fallen kin. Every scar, every shattered remnant of the enemy's camp, bore witness to a legacy wrought in sacrifice, a legacy that demanded both honor and renewal. In the stillness that followed the chaos, Tasunka's mind swirled with the ghosts of his past, the quiet laughter of his people, the whispered prayers of ancestors, and the unyielding call for justice that had driven him from the ruins of his village. His heart, heavy with the grief of irrevocable loss, also pulsed with an unbreakable will to mend the shattered tapestry of his heritage. With each step he took, the weight of countless generations pressed upon him, urging him to transform sorrow into the strength required to forge a future where his people might rise anew. Beside him, Colt surveyed the desolation with eyes that had witnessed the raw brutality of nature and man alike. His rugged features, etched with the lines of hardship, softened momentarily as he regarded the bloodied earth, a canvas painted with the consequences of unchecked tyranny. In that transient pause, the two warriors found solace in their unspoken camaraderie. Their shared ordeal had bound them together, not merely as allies in battle, but as kindred spirits destined to challenge a legacy steeped in suffering and oppression. A sudden chill stirred the twilight, and a murmuring wind seemed to carry the voices of those lost, urging them onward. The adversaries they had vanquished were only a fraction of the greater darkness that loomed, a darkness fueled by greed, by the relentless exploitation of sacred lands, and by a history that refused to be forgotten. Tasunka's gaze hardened as he recalled the enemy's sneering words, the arrogance that had desecrated the sanctity of his ancestral home. Now, amid the ruins, a renewed purpose crystallized within him, to ensure that the sacrifices of the past would not be in vain, and that the spirit of his people would echo through the ages. In the gathering gloom, a flicker of movement drew their attention, a contingent of enemy reinforcements, silhouetted against the horizon like phantom marauders, creeping forward with predatory intent. The air grew taut with tension as Tasunka and Colt exchanged a glance of mutual determination, their eyes reflecting the dual fires of vengeance and hope. With a silent nod, they readied themselves for one final confrontation, a decisive moment that would either cement their legacy or plunge them into oblivion. As the first hostile figures emerged from the murky shadows, the two warriors steeled themselves. The ensuing clash was swift and savage, a final burst of violence that reverberated across the scarred earth. Tasunka's arrows soared with precision of a prayer, each release a silent invocation for redemption, while Colt's blade sang a lethal hymn in the dim light. The enemy, caught in the turbulent maelstrom of their relentless assault, faltered as the momentum of their combined might surged through the clearing. In a heart-stopping moment of raw defiance, Tasunka and Colt pressed their advantage, driving back the invading force with a fury born not of mere survival, but a deeper, almost sacred conviction. In the final throes of the battle, as the enemy's resolve crumbled like brittle stone, a piercing cry shattered the murmur of conflict. Tasunka, bloodied yet unbowed, met the desperate gaze of a lone adversary, an embodiment of all the greed and cruelty that had scarred his world. In that charged instant, as steel met steel and the air filled with the clang of final judgment, the warrior channeled every ounce of ancestral pride and personal agony into one climactic strike. The enemy's blade faltered, and with it, the last vestige of an oppressive legacy crumbled into silence. When at last the echoes of combat faded into the night, a profound stillness descended over the battlefield, a stillness laden with both relief and the weight of irreversible loss. Tasunka's chest heaved with exhausted triumph as he surveyed the horizon, where the first tender glimmers of dawn began to chase away the long shadows of night. Beside him, Colt's steady gaze conveyed an unspoken promise, that their journey was far from over, and that the struggle for a just future would demand as much heart as it had valor. In that fragile calm, the two warriors knelt upon the blood-soaked earth, their hands joining in a silent pact to honor every sacrifice made in the name of freedom and dignity. Tasunka's voice, low and resolute, broke the reverent silence. Our legacy is not defined solely by the battles we wage, but by the hope we nurture in the hearts of our people. Every drop of blood, every fallen comrade, carries with it the promise of future where justice prevails. His words, steeped in both sorrow and fierce determination, resonated like a battle hymn, a call to rise above the despair and rebuild what had been torn asunder. Colt's reply was measured and firm, his tone carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. Let our struggle be the spark that ignites the flame of change. In every act of defiance, in every stand against tyranny, we carve a path for those who will follow. Our fight continues in the hearts of those who dare believe that a better tomorrow is possible. In that moment, amid the lingering echoes of battle and the soft murmur of a nascent dawn, the two warriors became not just symbols of resistance, but living embodiments of an unyielding spirit. As the new day broke over a land scarred yet not defeated, Tasunka rose to his feet, his eyes alight with the promise of renewal. He extended a call to every soul who had witnessed their struggle, a call to remember that the fight for justice and dignity is eternal, and that every act of courage, no matter how small, contributes to a legacy that transcends time. Stand with us, he seemed to declare, his voice carrying on the morning breeze. Honor the past, and join in the quest to forge a future where our children inherit not the chains of oppression, but the unbreakable spear of freedom. In the final moments, as the sun ascended to claim the sky and the land breathed a tentative sigh of relief, the stage was set for a new chapter, a chapter defined by resilience, unity, and the enduring hope that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the human spirit can illuminate the path forward. The bittersweet legacy of sacrifice had paved the way for redemption, and the call to action echoed like a timeless promise that every viewer, every listener, holds within them the power to shape destiny. And so, with hearts aflame and resolve unyielding, the journey continued, a thrilling, unending pursuit of justice, remembrance, and the promise of a brighter dawn.